I'm going to put the spotlight on my 12-year-old again because she brings so much wisdom. She overheard my conversation with my husband. We were talking about the finances might look like, because as a founder, we don't take market salaries and we don't know when we're going to get investment in. So it is a really big financial risk. And so as I was talking about this with my husband, she overheard the conversation and she said, "Oh my gosh, are we poor? Can I still go to college? Are we going to lose the house?" And it's like, "We're fine. You're absolutely going to college. Go do your homework. We're not losing the house." And then she said to me, "Does this mean you'll be in a better mood?" And wow, Sophie, that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to hear, because it made me realize that as much as I loved what I was doing at Xbox, it carried a level of stress that was really pouring into my family life. And I wasn't the mom that I wanted to be. I wasn't the wife that I wanted to be. I wasn't the friend that I wanted to be. And I really needed to step back and reevaluate where I was and how I was investing my energy.
Welcome to the Rise and Play podcast. I am Sophie Vaux, your host and leadership coach. In the show, my wonderful co-host and I sit down with influential and diverse leaders from the gaming industry to hear about their leadership journey. Not the well-polished stories, but the real stories. The up and down, the breakthrough, and the failures. Or should we rather say learnings? Each episode will transport you into a magical space of vulnerability with our guest. And together, you'll be reminded that no matter how hard it is, you are not alone in this journey, and find the courage to keep going. Come and join the ride. Let's begin. As a former product leader who worked 16 years in the gaming industry, I know how difficult it is to get reliable and usable player insights. The logistics of scheduling, recruiting the right players, collecting and reviewing feedback, it is all time away from game development. But you know how fundamental it is to test assumptions with your core audience and iterate at a lower cost before marketing an unproven game. I am proud to announce Playtest Cloud as our key partner, as I have believed since day one in the quality of their service and their mission to democratize player research. Playtest Cloud can take the hassle out of organizing game research yourself and delivers results within 48 hours, allowing you to implement changes in time for your release. Having been a long-time user of the platform, it is the industry standard used by top AAA and mobile studios, and now they also support indie developers with special pricing. Working for a year on the wrong game is an expensive mistake, and you can de-risk it now by investing in your player research. Check out the show notes for a free trial and learn more about Playtest Cloud. Welcome everyone to a new podcast episode of Rise and Play, and today tuning in with Jen MacLean, post-GDC madness and so on. So Jen was at GDC like many other studio founders, presenting, sharing, sometimes fundraising. We'll cover that today. And before we start, giving you a bit of background about Jen. So also with Jen, we connected through the PlayCap network, a wonderful network of amazing women. I'm going to say it again. And then yet from a conversation to another, we just said, okay, let's go on the podcast and get to know each other this way, which is also a fun way. And before Jen, we'll cover today more about her studio, Dragon Snack Games. Previously, Jen was the general manager of creator partnership for Xbox, where her team managed Xbox's largest partner relationship and Jen college content strategy for new initiatives. And as a lifelong gamer, Jen has also held many senior roles in game development over her career, including leading worldwide business development for small and mid-sized game studio, for Amazon Web Services, and serving as the executive director for IGDA, International Game Developer Association, and IGDA Foundation. So let's welcome Jen. So glad to have you and to talk more about your new venture.
Thanks so much, Sophie. I'm so excited to be here today.
So let's begin with the start. I love to ask that question to studio founders because it's a time where some industry executives are forced to become founders because it's just difficult. So some jobs are just gone. So I'd love to ask always that question, whether it was forced or it was chosen. What was the starting point of starting the studio? What was the pivotal moment of your life. So if you could give a bit of background and probably with your previous role to starting the company.
I have been thinking for a long time now about starting a studio. I talked with a good friend and company advisor, Shannon Loftus, about this years ago, and then had an amazing conversation with Ed Fries from OneUp back in April of 2024. And the opportunity to ask him for his advice on whether I should leave this great corporate job at Microsoft, one of the world's most valuable companies, to start something very risky. And he asked me two questions, Sophie, that really stuck with me. First was, what's the worst that could happen? And my immediate response was, well, we can't raise any money and we go out of business. He's like, yeah, okay, but that happens a lot. So it's not going to be a reflection on you. And if you can be thoughtful about what you've learned, I actually see you as a stronger candidate for roles. And then he asked, what's holding you back? And immediately I knew, like, I need a designer. I'm not a game designer. I need a designer. And so it was obvious to me, thinking about what's the worst that could happen and what's holding me back, that this wasn't just a passing fad. And when I was looking at what I had been doing at Xbox, my team managed the largest relationships: EA, Epic, Roblox, Riot, Take-Two, Ubisoft, Embracer, as well as co-leading next-gen content strategy. There were two things that really crystallized for me to have the universe sending a sign that this was the time to do it. First is that I saw all of the metrics for those partners, and I saw the opportunities. I saw what was working and what wasn't. And I also saw how my 8-year-old, my 12-year-old, and my 19-year-old were playing their products. My 8-year-old loves Minecraft and Roblox, but he doesn't have that collaborative, cooperative game experience to go to after that. My 12-year-old is playing Roblox with her phone propped up next to her, and she's FaceTiming or Discording or WhatsApping with her friends. And that need for social connection, for social validation, I think it's true for every person, but it's especially acute for Gen Z and Gen Alpha. When you look at 57% of Gen Z want to be influencers, like, they really crave that social validation they get from living online and getting the likes. One of my co-founders, 8-year-olds, when he's excited about something, he'll say, smash that like and subscribe button, Dad. They've grown up with the idea that you share your life online and you want the validation of the likes. You want the validations of the comments. What happens when you don't get that? There's a great book called The Anxious Generation that talks about the downsides of living a life online. So I kept thinking, there's something here. There's really something here. Giving an experience that is cooperative and collaborative, that can be the place where kids and young adults and older adults as well transition to as they start to move more of their gaming time off of Minecraft and Roblox, and they start to explore other experiences. I reached out to a good friend, Chris Nemkowski, who had been VP and GM of High Jump Studios at Scopely. They're the studio that shipped Monopoly Go. And said, hey, I'm thinking about starting something new. I'd love to talk with you about it. And he said, yeah, I'll talk to you, but I kind of have this idea that I'm fixated on. Well, he'd been seeing the same thing in his 8-year-old research that he had seen and talking to his friends. And we thought, you know what, there's really something here. And when we think about how we want to spend the rest of our careers, it's working with people that we love on something that we're passionate about. And for us, the idea of creating that social, collaborative, cooperative, safe space where players feel valued and important and impactful, like, I can't think of a better way to spend my time.
That was a masterclass of coaching, everything that you shared. So I'll summarize a few points, because for listeners here, powerful question. What is the worst that can happen, right? So a lot of times we imagine big fear, something terrible, and then say, okay, it's not that bad. So that was a great question. And second, what is holding you back? And also confronting your own, fears or doubts and so on. And what I love about what you shared is so thoughtful and deep. And like for founders, I working with many of them, and everyone has an individual process, of course. But starting, I have to say, from a point where how do I want to spend the rest of my career? And you seem very intentional about it with who and the impact of what you do. I can imagine your energy boost every morning, because starting a company is really hard. The odds of success are low in that way. So you better have something that you can hang on every day to just like, why am I waking up every day? So it's beautiful. And it seems so grounded when you say it. It's not like, oh, I had a vision and then I go and fly. It's like, that's you're so grounded when you say it. And that's really refreshing. I just wanted to acknowledge that.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful for a lot of things. First of all, my husband is amazing. He's fully supportive of this. And I recognize that I have a lot of privilege because he has a great job that he loves with great benefits. And that puts us in a situation to take risks that not everyone has. And so I acknowledge that privilege and I'm grateful for it. I also have amazing supporters around me. And you hit on something that my good friend and advisor and investor, Ron Boyer, said to me. He said, as I was thinking about what was next for me and if I really did want to do this, he said to me, Jen, do you want to write a line in a resume or do you want to write a line in a eulogy? And I was like, wow, okay, way to frame it, Ron. Because it really kind of did get to the points you just made, Sophie, where it was thinking about our time is precious on this world, and we don't know how much time we have. So do I want to invest it in another bullet point on a resume? Do I want to invest it in helping big companies get bigger? Or do I want to do something different? Do I want to make something? Do I want to impact the lives of players and team members and creators in a way that maybe I couldn't, doing a job at Xbox, which I loved, but was at its heart helping the biggest companies get even bigger. And I missed making something. And I missed the opportunity to do something that I share with my kids every day and I get them excited.
Yeah.
One of the most heartwarming things that has happened to me recently, yesterday, we have a video of our first playable prototype. And I'd shared it out with a number of advisors and investors. And so I was checking the YouTube page to see how many views we had. And my 12-year-old had written a comment, which was like, so exciting. This eats. I can't wait to play it. I was like, oh, my baby's supporting me. And it was the emotional resonance of just that one comment, because she's my baby. She's my 12-year-old, right? It was amazing. And it, in its way, made all of the challenges of starting a studio worth it. Because here I am inspiring one of the most important people in the world to me and making something that I can't wait to play with her and that I hope she will be proud to share with her friends. I started off by talking about everyone needing emotional validation. Well, founders need that too. And part of what I've learned along the way is it is okay to manufacture success because sometimes you just need that high, you need that dopamine hit. And also, there is no success like the people you love saying, wow, this is great. I'm proud of you.
That's such a sweet anecdote. Thanks for sharing. And I see as well in how you approach it, you really put the heart back into the business, which I've seen a bit missing, I have to say, the past years where it's been a lot, okay, what's the business case? What's the money, the market? Thank you, mobile gaming industry. I mean, I've been a long time in the mobile gaming industry and it is operating like a business, but I think it's been an imbalance a bit. So it's refreshing just to say, let's remember why we are creator in the first place, right? It's not like we woke up one morning and say, I'm going to make 1 million and that's going to be my motivation every morning. And here it's a very simple story where you think about your daughter, your kids, like they're really in your heart in how you run the business. So that's beautiful. And I hope it inspires other founders to maybe find again the soul back into their business. That's very necessary for the creative process. So I'm curious then, as you've decided, because the important step, like you've decided first and then, okay, an execution. What were the first steps? I'm asking this because this is a very relevant question for, I know, executives, leaders in games at the moment, either already on the way out of the company or slowly pushed out. And so that's very relevant for them to understand how that works. What were the steps when you've decided leaving company or starting something, starting tactical, concrete steps?
Well, first, I talked to my husband because, he is our shadow investor or one of them. And I'm going to put the spotlight on my 12-year-old again because she brings so much wisdom. She overheard my conversation with my husband. We were talking about what the finances might look like because as a founder, we don't take market salaries and we don't know when we're going to get investment in. So it is a really big financial risk. And so as I was talking about this with my husband, she overheard the conversation and she said, "Oh my gosh, are we poor? Can I still go to college? Are we going to lose the house?" I was like, "We're fine. You're absolutely going to college. Go do your homework. We're not losing the house." And then she said to me, "Does this mean you'll be in a better mood?" And wow, Sophie, that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to hear because it made me realize that as much as I loved what I was doing at Xbox, it carried a level of stress that was really pouring into my family life. And I wasn't the mom that I wanted to be. I wasn't the wife that I wanted to be. I wasn't the friend that I wanted to be. And I really needed to step back and reevaluate where I was and how I was investing my energy, and also how I was letting the things that happen on a day-to-day basis stay with me after work is done. Because you could argue that I kind of jumped from a high-stress role at Xbox to an even higher stress role as a founder, kind of from the frying pan into the fire. But it's different because I'm doing something that I love. I am pouring my whole heart and soul into something that I believe in, that I'm making with this amazing group of people, and that I believe can not only make the world a better place, but can be a successful long-term studio and business. And so when I have stressful days now, in many ways, they're more personal. Certainly the impact is more personal, but also it's in the context of something bigger that I believe in much more than I think any role at a large corporation could be.
Yeah. And what you touch on is also, unfortunately, a root of what we see and diagnosed as burnout, in our workplaces, where there's that misalignment of what feeds your soul, the sense of purpose and meaning of what you do. And it's kind of lost in a corporate level because you start to become a bit of a cog in a big system. And here exactly is the relationship to your heart is immediate, right? You know why. It's very close to your heart. And myself being an entrepreneur, I work a lot, but I don't feel drained by work because it's things that are in alignment. So it's not so much, we think sometimes it's about the hours we do, of course, to a certain point, but it's more about how we do those hours and how we spend time and who we spend time with. So when that is aligned, actually, it's a complete different feeling of energy. Although, yes, it's hard to build a business, but you're not alone and you are, with this energy. So it's a good reminder. How did you start with your partner or co-founder? Did you start to hire people? Did you fundraise? Did you have an idea? So it's always the question like what, why, who? So in which order did all of this happen?
You really hit on the answer when you talked about sharing energy and sharing alignment. So when I decided, yes, I'm going to do this, the first thing I did was write a values and principles document, not focusing on what we were building, but focusing on how we're building it and why we're building it. Because the what is going to change. Anyone who has been in game development will tell you the what's going to change. The how and the why, to me, those are constants. And I really wanted to be very thoughtful and deliberate about how we run the studio, about why we make those choices. And I knew that that document would also be a great starting point for conversations with advisors, with investors, with founders, with team members. So I talked to some friends in the industry that I trusted, Scott Hartzman, Shannon Loftus, among others, wrote the values and principles document. And when I reached out to Chris and he said, yeah, I'm interested. I actually have been thinking about something similar. I sent him the values and principles doc. I sent him a spec budget, and I sent him a very high-level 3-page game design doc. And he had been speaking with Michelle Menard, an amazingly talented technical designer. She has literally written a book on developing games with Unity, and most recently was creative director on an unannounced RPG. And the three of us had such a similar worldview. We knew how we wanted to structure the studio. We knew where we aligned in terms of what was important. And so we revised the values and principles document together. Chris also had a spec budget, which was within 10% of mine. So we knew that we were very close. And Michelle had been working on game design iterations that were very, very closely aligned with mine. And it really felt like the universe was saying, you have to do this. You have to do this. You have to do it with these people. And in a lot of ways, because we have very clearly defined roles, my role is business, Michelle's role is creative, Chris's role is tech and production, makes it a lot easier because there is that clarity of ownership and purpose and role. And we've also really gone out of our way to build a very trusting co-founder relationship because it's so important. If the co-founders aren't aligned, the company's not going to be aligned. And having that values and principles document from the get-go was incredibly powerful. When we talk with someone about joining the team in any capacity, even if it is just as a contractor, we send them the values and principles document first. And we say, hey, during your interview, we're going to ask you about this. And we are going to assess whether or not you're the right fit based on these values. Be prepared to talk about them. And I think it really sets people up from the beginning to understand that the how is just as important as the what. The why is just as important as the how. And this is our how and our why. And if you want to join the team, you have to be fully on board with that.
Amazing. I don't know if it's exactly like a culture handbook, but it's as close to that where you start, the principles on how you run the company. It's amazing. And it is the most explicit way to align everyone who is collaborating with you and like to feel like, is it something for me, a venture for me or not? And a lot of wisdom as well here and discipline, I guess, because it's so tempting to jump on the what. That's also what I've seen in the industry. It is like shiny opportunity, let's jump on that. And I've seen teams unfortunately falling apart, not having a clear reasons to be together on the way to work together. And also being very mindful that the what will change. I think it's makes it approach the business in a humble way and not be too attached to the what, because it's also what happens as creatives. We fall in love with our creation. That's hard to avoid, but it's a part of our brain somewhere knows that this might end. But then what's the reason of being of this company is not the what, it's the why and who and how we work. I hope there will be some pages or some elements of it you will share eventually, because I'm very curious of how you wrote it and when time comes. Okay, so as you wrote those principles, your why, you start together. So you have a leadership team, co-founders. What happened next? Did you start to hire people? So you had also an early investment, which is very difficult in the current environment. So which year was that? So maybe the more funding journey and beginning of a team.
Yep. So we reached out to a number of angels, colleagues we had worked with. I'm very lucky to have an amazing network. People who we knew had made angel investments before. And so we've raised $500,000 through angel investments, which really gave us the opportunity to bring on our core team. Right now, we are a small but mighty team of 6. So it's me, Chris Nimkoski, our CTO and executive producer, Michelle Menard, who's our chief creative officer. Then we have a lead engineer, a narrative designer, and an art director. And we had all worked, at least one of the founders had worked with our 3 key employees before. Chris worked with Jason at Scopely and Backflip. Michelle and I both worked with Paul Murphy, who's our narrative designer at various companies. And then Michelle had worked with our art director, as well as our fractional COO had worked with our art director. So lots of connective tissue there. And we didn't just say we're hiring this person no matter what. We put them through that interview process because we wanted to be really deliberate and make sure, again, that the founders were all on the same page. So we gave them our values and principles document. We said, hey, we're going to ask you questions. Jen will ask you behavioral interview questions about these values. And from my perspective, Sophie, I am happy to share the questions that I will ask someone ahead of time, because I'm not trying to trip somebody up. I'm not trying to trick them. I want to see if they're the right fit for not the what, but the how and the why. And so when it comes to, for example, evaluating an engineer, I know our lead engineer and CTO are going to assess the what. For me, it's the how and the why. Are they able to understand how we're doing things? Do they understand the underlying why? Are they going to live our values and principles? And because we were so thoughtful about that process and about what we're looking for, we were able to make really great hires very early on. We were also thoughtful about the fact that we can't pay market rate right now. We are a startup. We have not launched a game yet. And so we were very transparent about that and very clear that if your primary goal right now is maximizing your earning potential, this is not the right place for you.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And by being transparent and very clear that, hey, we are not going to necessarily match what you may have made before, but here's what we are doing. We're giving you the chance to be an owner. All of our employees have equity shares in the company. We're giving you the chance to build this project that we all are so passionate about and that we believe is an amazing opportunity. We're giving you a chance to work with fantastic people. We also really focus on empowering our team. One of our values is to not care about the number of hours people work as long as they are meeting their sprint goals. If you can meet your sprint goals in 30 hours, great. What we found happens, though, because people feel empowered, is they'll say, hey, I've done this and I've done my stretch goals, and I think it would be really cool if we did this, this, and this as well. And I have a great example of that. As we were prepping for GDC, I said, hey, how much time and effort would it take to get the game running on a Steam Deck? And the next day, I got a picture of Nemco with the game running on the Steam Deck and instructions for how to do it. Because it's that attitude that, hey, it's not measuring the hours that someone works. We're not even measuring the cars that they move from column to column on the sprint. A lot of it is about impact. And when people feel like they are owners and they feel empowered and they feel excited by their impact, they want more and more and more. And it becomes this amazing virtuous circle.
That's beautiful. I love the anecdote. And again, this is a great model for the listeners as well on how to think about hiring at the beginning, when sometimes the folks believe that, okay, we're a startup, so we don't need process and we're going to do the opposite of what corporate have done. But yeah, so there's a limiting belief that when we start a new studio, we don't need any structure, we go anti-corporate. And then what you share here is to be very intentional with the interview process. Yeah, having a structure interview and to know who's being very transparent. It's an important piece because, again, startup, there's a promise of freedom of a startup and then the perks of corporate. And this is not a reality. So I really love, again, so grounded as leadership, the transparency and to say what it is and what is not. And people who embrace like really what the opportunity is, the impact, the ownership, working with an amazing team, they will really thrive and embrace the environment. Like it seems it has been the case. So yeah, it seems like a lovely team from the way you're talking about the team.
It's funny because we do have more process in terms of having our values documented and being very clear with potential candidates. This is how the interview is going to go. This is what Jen's going to ask you about. Part of that is I was at Amazon for 3 years, and Amazon has a very defined hiring process. I learned a ton about evaluating candidates there. But at the same time, we also love the lack of process in a lot of ways. We have one standing meeting a day. We have our stand-up. We'll play the game after. That's it. Then we'll do ad hoc meetings as needed. We have one weekly founders meeting, company culture and values, we call it. But one of the reasons why I think we've been able to do so much so quickly, we have a playable prototype of our exploration mechanic. And we did that in 6 weeks. And we were able to do that because we didn't have a lot of meetings. Everybody understood the goal of the prototype. They understood what had to be in it. They understood why. That why is so important. And then we just let people work. We kind of got out of their way, right? And when you start a company, I think it's absolutely critical to ask yourself what is really important and why is it important? And for us, we want people to feel empowered. We don't want them to ever feel like they have to have a meeting about something. If you're not sure, just pick up the phone. But at the end of the day, we all own this. And we want to make sure that people feel like they can move quickly and that they can make decisions because our team is senior and they're trusted and they know what they're doing. And I think that's how we were able to get to a playable prototype in 6 weeks because we took a very senior team. We were very explicit about this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. This is why we're doing it. And then they just went and did it. And it was amazing.
It reminds me of my days running a studio with a super lean team and very engaged with so I've been listening to you with like so much spark in the eyes. It gives me a bit of nostalgia, but in a good way. It's very sweet. It's so hard to develop a new game, which channel, which platform. It could be a long time of development. Is it going to hit the market? How do we build an audience, a community? So all those questions. So what can you share about the game or more the category that you're in and the exploration you have about the game? So I love to ask a lot, but I'm also very mindful, that you can't share everything, but what you can share at least for today.
So we take an approach that's a little bit different, and it's informed by both our experience as developers and as leaders, but also by some of the information we have access to or have had access to. And the company really started from the idea of what player needs aren't being met. When somebody goes from Minecraft and Roblox to Fortnite and Valorant, all of them are amazing games, but they're very different experiences. And if you play Stardew Valley and you want to play with your friends, what's that like? How is that challenging? How is that a good experience? How is it a bad experience? Same with titles like Animal Crossing as well. And so it became really obvious to us that there's not a great multiplayer experience that is cooperative, that is collaborative, that really leans on creation outside of survival games like Valheim and Enshrouded. So what if you give people the chance to make something together in a way where they're not doing it under threat and in a way where everything they do makes the play experience for the people that they're playing with better? And we started thinking more and more about player personas. Chris worked with player personas in shipping Monopoly and really saw hands-on how valuable they can be in understanding your player, understanding what they care about, what resonates with them, as well as what doesn't. So we shaped our 3 player personas. We have the creator. This is the person who is your wannabe influencer. They thrive in making things and in sharing things and in having people react to that. We have the explorer. This is your hardcore RPG player. They want to max out their character level. They want to see great character progression. They want to equip the awesome armor. They want to complete every quest and find every resource. And they have a huge inventory to show it. And then we have the storyteller. And this is the person who will get in heated debates on Discord about which NPC is the best to romance and why. They will make their S-tier rankings of the different NPCs in the game. It will go super deep on lore. We have this amazing marketing intern who is just telling us that she read every single book on Baldur's Gate and used it to create her own timeline.
Oh my God.
Right? But there are people who really thrive on that. And those are our 3 key player personas that we're developing for. And so when we talk about, hey, what if we do this instead of that? The first question is, how does it map to our player personas? Will this decision make the game better or worse for those player personas? What's the trade-off? What player need are we meeting by doing this? So, for example, when we did our exploration prototype, we wanted to make sure you could gather resources and that you could kill things for our explorer player persona. But we also wanted to make sure that you could engage with the NPCs for our storyteller persona and that the NPCs had really interesting and clear, visually different, but also contextually different. They had really interesting and clear points of view. And for our next milestone that we're working on, which is crafting items and building houses, that's going to hit squarely in the creator persona. Are we doing something where the creator feels like not only is it easy and approachable, but does it give them the opportunity to create something new and amazing that they are proud to share and that doesn't look like anybody else's creation, that really highlights their individuality and their talent? So for us, it all goes back to those player personas. And I know the game is going to change over the course of development, but we ask ourselves, how are we meeting the needs of those people? We also focus more broadly on Gen Z and Gen Alpha and how their needs and expectations are different from the players that we are, for example, because I'm a mom to Gen Z and Gen Alpha. I am not in that audience. They have such expectations around being able to play when they want, where they want, how they want, with who they want. And so for us, part of our design is including a sample 3-minute play session, a 30-minute play session, and 90-minute play session. Because this is an audience that expects to be able to do something fun and interesting in 3 minutes when they are walking from class to class or waiting for the bus. And they want something fun and interesting in the 30 minutes before bedtime. And they want something fun and interesting when they have dedicated gaming time where they can sit down and go super deep. And keeping in mind the expectations for being able, especially to play with who you want, on the platforms you want, doing it in the available free time that you have, whether it's 30 minutes or 90 minutes or 5 hours or 3 minutes, that's absolutely critical to meeting this audience. And I think that as an industry, we have to keep in mind that not everyone is going to spend 3 hours on their game of choice, and really think about how we meet the evolving needs and how we compete not just with other games, but especially with other forms of entertainment. Or you can log on to TikTok for 3 minutes and find yourself 30 minutes later in a total rabbit hole. But the idea that consumers can control the amount of entertainment they consume and engage with and can be very directed, and that's really important. And I think it's an area of opportunity for us.
Well, so again, I'm very impressed in the level of thoughtfulness in how, we approach the design and the different segments of player and audience, and not only, of course, categorizing them, but really understand the behavior, right? And the needs, because that's something I see. The endless hours of plays, it comes to a point that is undesirable. I mean, even like for a generation where we end up with, I don't know, a lot of hours. And then this is also a philosophical question, like how as game makers, we create the systems and then we create boundaries for undesirable behavior. And this is very thoughtful here where you contain the different use case and different times. So I love it. And how open you are also to share about it, because, this is knowledge and insights. This is like quite high level, but it shows how much you are in a deep understanding also of your audience. And that I'm excited to follow, what you will develop next. So even a part of me of curiosity, like maybe I have a bit of a Gen Z once in me to play, in a more respectful way of the time. And there are those micro moments and connection, again, it reaches everyone, because unfortunately we have so many tools in our life these days to not be connected personally with each other. So it's important for the next generation. At least some of us, we knew how to interact with each other before technology was surrounding our life. And I have no idea what it is to be 10 years old today, where you can just stay at home and sort of connect, right? And this is a big problem.
I think you're right. And what gives me hope is when I see my 12-year-old with her iPhone propped up next to her while she's in Roblox. Because that to me shows that she wants a connection to the people who matter most to her that she can't find when she's playing with 100 other people in a game on Roblox. And every time I pitch someone who is a parent who has a kid in that age range, I'll talk about that. And they'll be like, yeah, my kid does that too. I think it really is because they crave that connection, not just with a random stranger, but with someone they care about. And we talk about a metaverse. I believe that what Gen Z and Gen Alpha really want is a neighborhood. I think it's what we all really want. We don't want to be a face in the crowd. We want to feel valued. We want to feel safe. We want to feel important. We want to feel validated. We want to feel like we have an impact. And the best experiences are when those emotional needs are met. We talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Well, at the end of the day, I think those are constants. There are constants across humanity. And by creating an experience where people have that need for belonging and that need for safety and that need for feeling important met, I think that's incredibly powerful.
And games are such a powerful medium for that, redirected, So it's, again, for me, very refreshing to see games. It's such a powerful medium to be directed in that way, for the social value and impact for also the coming generation. I have some last questions on, so you're in a quite far in your prototype and the key features. You cover like different personas. So are you deep in production right now? So my question is around with the phase of the company. You just came back from GDC. Are you fundraising? Curious about your phase of development right now.
It's funny because it feels so early to me. So we are prototyping various systems going into vertical slice. We believe firmly in playable builds as quickly as possible. So we have had a playable build really since late February, early March. So about 4 weeks after development kicked off. We had our lead engineer join us on January 27th. Wow. That date is etched in my memory because it really was a game changer for us in terms of our development velocity and progress. Next up for us is proving out the building and item creation systems, then doing some prototype work with NPCs, all leading into a vertical slice that's available in August. What we're doing that's a little bit different and that I think is a little controversial is aiming to get that vertical slice in front of a community as early as possible. Because we believe this audience wants to feel like they are active co-creators in the experience. They are used to janky UI. They grew up on Roblox and Minecraft. Yeah. They are used to stuff that maybe doesn't work or isn't super visually polished, and it doesn't matter to them. What matters is it's fun. And you know what, Sophie? I want to know if what we're building is fun in August instead of waiting until the day we go into early access, because by that time it is way, way, way too late. By getting the game in front of players, even if it's a small group of 500 or 1,000 players very early, by getting their feedback, by listening to them and making them feel valued too, we're not only getting invaluable research and feedback and data on our game, we're also building our advocates. We're building the people who are going to tell their friends, like, hey, I saw this game a year ago when it was very, very early, and I've been playing it, and you need to sign on now that it's in early access. Because with this audience kind of going back to the emotional needs and wanting to feel validated, if they find something they fall in love with, they will tell everybody. They will tell all their friends. They will bring their friends to the game. Same if they find something that they hate. And so by building our cheerleading squad, by building our organic marketing squad, in addition to thinking about how we continue to engage and grow that community, I think that's absolutely critical. And I know a lot of companies believe really firmly that you can't talk about the game until it's this phase close to launch, and then at this time period. And you don't ever want to show something that isn't polished to players. You especially don't want to give players a chance to play. And I think that's wrong. I think that our player base has evolved and that they will forgive jank and forgive bugs if you set the expectation that, hey, you're playing this game a year and a half, 2 years before we launch it. You are one of a special set of community people. We want you to play it now because we know that you are going to have amazing feedback, and we want the feedback. We want to listen to it. I think in a lot of ways, this is a superpower that independent studios have that a large company can't do. EA is not going to put Football Club 27 in front of their community, a year early, because it's not the way that they develop games. And that's fine. We can do things big companies can't. And I think we really need to lean into that and to embrace it. When we talk with potential partners about fundraising or investments or publishing deals, we're really clear that this is important to us. We will not compromise on it. And it's been really helpful in kind of weeding out the people who say, no, we don't want to work like that. Great. you do your thing, we're going to do our thing. And then the people who embrace it and you're like, yes, that's the way to do it. Let's go build that community now. Let's get the game in front of them super early. And for us, it's been kind of that great litmus test. Like we use our values and principles document when we evaluate potential hires. This is how we feel about community and getting their involvement early and often. Litmus test when we evaluate potential partners and investors and publishers. We are actively fundraising at the moment. We have had some great support from some well-known industry angels, and it's a challenging time to be fundraising right now. So for us, the more that we get that community feedback early, the more that we get the community feedback often, that really sets us apart. And when you think about the environment today from the perspective of an investor, they have literally thousands of projects and teams they can invest in. So how do you set yourself apart? And for us, part of it is being very clear that we know who we are building for. These are our personas. This is how we are validating. This is how we incorporate that in our development process and in our marketing process and in our community process every single day. And for people who understand not just the what, but the how and the why, it resonates really well with them.
I don't know if it's like courage in the end that is what is required from you, but having that discipline and not compromising on why you started, because in this process of partners, it's the same. It's going to amplify, like the reach, the impact of what you do if you have alignment in this way of developing and distributing early. By the way, I'm super fond of this coming from mobile again, where I worked in hyper casual studio. So I found the extreme where there's nothing too embarrassing to share too early. You learn anyway. So I love the approach. And I think it's very refreshing for the space of games that are more from a premium model to be less precious about it and learn quickly and early with the community and building with the community. So I love as well that focus, in disciplines, like this is how we do things. And if it's not your jam, it's okay, and just trusting that. So, I'm very excited about your studio, what you create, and going to follow from close for what I can follow. And as we're reaching the end of the conversation today, is there something I didn't ask, I should have asked, or another way to support for the listeners or myself today in your studio success?
So if people are curious about what we're building, I'd love for them to go to our website, which is www.dragonsnacksgames.com, and sign up for our newsletter. It's the best way to stay in touch with what we're building. We'll be launching our community later this spring, again, to kind of get that involvement, get that feedback early and often, and would love to welcome your listeners along the journey with us.
Yeah. So I'll add for sure in the show notes the link of the website. And I think that's your presence and, sharing what you do will have a lot of resonance. Knowing my audience as well, because I'm 100% like when you know your audience, this is actually as a business, what you do. And the resonance will be there for sure for the founders and aspiring founders. So, Jen, thank you so much. I'm so glad that I get to have prime time, to go a bit deeper in asking, because last time I had some curiosities like, oh, okay, I have to ask about that. And I feel like I know a little more, but I want to know more. And I want to say it again, it's really refreshing to talk to founders like you, what you're building, the way you're building it, and with the team. It gives a sense of hope a bit for me, for the industry, and the landscape of founders who, it's a tough time where some founders think there's only space for, I have to say, like money and profit and growth, and there's no space for creators. But today you're sharing also in a very professional and business way that, yes, there is space, but you have to just own it and, be disciplined with it. And whatever comes, up, then it is following the destiny. So I just love it. It's very inspiring. Thank you.
Sophie, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I appreciate you having me as a guest on your podcast.
Yeah, well, we'll hear more from you, I'm pretty sure, later this year. Thank you very much, Jen. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this latest episode of the Rise and Play podcast. We keep growing our community of conscious leaders across the industry and beyond. If you want to join this movement, please share the podcast with other conscious leaders, because we have so much more we can learn from each other. And if you want to accelerate your growth, I offer creative leadership coaching and workshop, plus other free resources that you can find on riseandplay.io. I can't wait to connect with you. Have a great week and remember to take care of yourself. Until the next time,